Hey everybody, welcome back to the Stash Report from Stash Project. This is going to be our March 2023 pending kit release video. Not sure what we should call these now that we're not doing weekly videos anymore, but for folks that are new to the channel, first of all, welcome. Hope you find what we do here fun and informative, or at least informative or fun. Like one of those with the old joke about it being a good time, but it wasn't good or a time. Anyway, for the folks that are new here, we do these at the beginning of every month. This one's a little late, but still, better never than late, if am I right? That covers the expected kit releases for a given month. Again, this is March of 2023. So first up in the list of things, we have to go back into February for a big dump of Revell kits that finally saw release. This is about two and a half weeks ago now. If you're not really ear to the ground on the interwebs or your hobby shop, if you're still fortunate enough to have one, doesn't have a very large social media platform or presence, you may have missed these, so we're going to go through those real quick. And then we have the March kits, which have round 2 stuff, have some Salvino stuff, and the usual sort of suspects from overseas, including some Fujimi kits this month. It's been a little while since Fujimi's put any car kits out. Been a few here and there throughout 2022, but not a lot. And it seems like 2023 they're going to have a little focus on getting a few things out, because there are a few kits pending into the rest of the spring as well. They're all reissues, but some of them are reissues of things that have not been seen in quite some time. So, that being said, let's go ahead and hop into those Revell kits. So, big picture here, blatantly stolen from Model Roundup, showing you the 6 kits that have come out in the last couple of weeks from Revell. All of these should be available from your favorite online retailer, as well as every good well-stocked hobby shop out there. So starting top to bottom, you have a reissue of the 1/8 scale LA Street Chopper. This kit last boxed in the LA Street Chopper version in 1971, was a brand new tool at that point. It's come out a few times over the years since then. The last time it was seen was 1992, so it has been 30 years since this kit was released last. I'm not a big expert on motorcycles, particularly motorcycles that are older than I am. However, it's certainly one of those kits that's long ago and not seen recently, which is always a good time, because I appreciate when kits like that come out onto the back out on the scene. Next up, you have a Revell boxing of the old Monogram 1978 Chevy Blazer Pooldozer. This time it's in a pulled pork livery. I guess Pooldozer was an actual thing back in the day, and that probably would have had to have been licensed to actually put the Pooldozer decals back onto it. I'm sure someone out in the aftermarket will do those at some point if they haven't already been done, in anticipation of this kit's reissue. The Pooldozer was a modified reissue of the original 1979 Monogram Blazer. The retool was done in 1982, and that, again, the last time that kit has been seen, I believe. I don't think that it's ever been reissued. There was a Revell Blazer, but that was 1/25. These tools were made way back before Revell and Monogram ever merged together in the 80s. So, in the middle 80s, I should say. Early 80s, still two separate companies. And so, like I said, I think this is the first time this version, specifically this version, has been available again. Monogram did that High Roller series, which this is technically part of, although it's a pull truck, not really a high roller, but it has those same tires on it. And so there's something that hasn't been out in 40 years at this point. So again, another quite a long time ago, far away thing. Next up beside it there, you have the 1939 Chevy sedan delivery. The kit does, I believe, at least according to the literature at the time when this was originally put out, I haven't actually seen the inside of this kit, has the beer barrels, or they're whiskey barrels technically in this sense, because it's a Kentucky distillery decals on here. It's fake, it's made up, it's not a real one. But that is, again, an old Monogram kit that takes its legacy back to 1978 when it was tooled up. The last time this kit was actually out was in 2005, when it was part of the Revell Lowrider series. So it's been quite a while again for this kit to have seen the light of day. It is being marketed as sort of a 2-in-1, so I believe the Lowrider parts are still in it. And then you have this street roddy thing. It's not a factory stock. It never was factory stock in terms of being a stock 39 sedan delivery. But again, another kit that hasn't been out for quite some time. Then you have a reissue of what they're calling the 70 Plymouth Duster Funny Car, and it is, I believe, Flame Out is the tagline to the car this time. Anybody who's been around for a while recognizes this, of course, as being the Cop Out, except now it's a fire vehicle rather than a police car. Can't be the Cop Out anymore because of the whole Tom Daniels is acting like a jilted prom queen thing, where he's still all angry that he never got paid from Revell when it went bankrupt with Hobbico back in 2008. His licensing is all over at Atlantis now, and, will we ever see the Revell things, the tooling that Revell still owns, ever come back out as Tom Daniel kits? That's hard to say. Supposedly relations are better than they were, but they're still obviously not anything great. This kit takes its origins back to 1970 when it was tooled up as a Tom McEwen Hot Wheels thing. It got added into the Cop Out in 1974. So again, it's an old kit. Last seen in, let me see here, 2013. It's about 10 years since this was out last. And just something to... if you're interested in such a thing, it's out there. Then you have the 99 Chevy Silverado Street Pickup. So this is kind of a little bit of an interesting one in the sense that the Silverado was last out in 2011 in its custom pickup form. This version has the stock rear bumper and the stock wheels put back into it, but it does not have a stock suspension. It still has the lowered custom suspension. The last time the stock wheels and the stock rear bumper were in a Silverado pickup kit was in 2007, 2006, 2007, depending on the box art that you picked up. I think technically it was in the Performance series, and it was in the Truck series, like real close together as far as boxings, as Revell sort of changed the boxings there in that time frame. But again, it's been a little while since the stock versions of stock rims and bumper have been in there, but again, it's not a stock height. This is very much similar to the reissue of the S10 from a year and a half, 2 years ago, where it came out with some of the stock parts, but it was still sitting on the Cyclone's lowered chassis and didn't have the two-wheel drive parts to it. I'm not sure what has happened to some of these pieces and parts in Revell's kits, but it is what it is. Nothing you can do about it at this point, I guess. And then lastly, down there at the bottom is a big 1/16th scale Pontiac Firebird 87 GTA. This is based off the 82 tooling that Revell did. It's modified into the GTA 1993, and then this is the first time that's been seen since 1993, so again, it's another 30-year gap between kit releases. So, an interesting choice of kits there from the new Revell, if you will. It's been a couple of years now since the new Revell's been around, but it's, I think I said Hobbico went back up in 2008, didn't I? They went back up in 2018. Anyway, it is what it is. Or has it even been longer than that? I'm not even sure anymore. It's such a thing where people still insist that Revell doesn't exist anymore. Clearly they do. I've lost track of time and space with that whole thing. I've argued with so many people for so long about it that I've completely and totally lost dates on it. But be that as it may, the German owners are sort of plowing through a little bit of older tooling. The Cop Out being the most recently reissued kit at 10 years old there. A lot of stuff that hasn't been seen for quite a while. So, again, I'm not going to sit here and complain too hard about their kit choices. There's nothing in that set for me necessarily, but hey, it's certainly a series of things that I haven't seen for a while. Also, they released several kits as like Ollie's exclusives this past month, toward the end of February, where they reissued the Dodge Stealth, I think it's the 2001 Corvette Z06, or maybe the 06 Z06. I can't remember which one. 05, I think, is actually what year it is. The 99 Mustang Cobra and the old 92 Revell Snap-Tight Dodge Viper. They're all in there for like $12 if you happen to have an Ollie's nearby and you haven't been there and ravaged the shelves, because for some reason, even though those are relatively common kits, They haven't been out in 10 years. They're in the 10-year-old monogram Dream Rides box art, but they've had like the skill level and all of the information updated to 2023 standards. They are 2023 stampings as far as the kits mold dates are. So they were done recently, and they were done exclusively for Ollie's. A lot of complaining online I've seen from a few hobby shops out there saying that they can't compete with Ollie's prices, which is true, but at the same time, those kits weren't available to distributors. They were exclusively an Ollie's thing. The way round two, occasionally, like twice a year at the end of school, and around Christmas releases, like 5-6 kits that are exclusively stamped just for Ollie's. There has to be a little bit of profit in those kits, I guess, a couple of bucks here and there, but if you're selling 8,000, 10,000 of them to Ollie's, because Ollie's has 800 some odd stores at this point, you're making a, 10, well, let's see, if you're making a couple of bucks a kit, you're making, $15,000, $25,000 worth of profit. It's guaranteed sale. They're buying them all. You know that you're selling every single one of those to Ollie's. Whether they can ever get rid of them, who knows? But then again, people attack Ollie's. They act like they've never seen a model kit before when Ollie's sells model kits. So that is interesting behavior. And then people try to sell them on eBay for the retail price. Very interestingly, you could tell these are exclusively stamped for Ollie's because the price tag is underneath the shrink wrap. That's your trigger. If you see some kits that pop up on eBay of old box art with new writing and a big either smudge on the image where somebody's trying to blur it out through their editing software, or there's a big square missing out of the shrink wrap where they've gone in and plucked the price tag off from underneath the hole they had to cut in the shrink wrap to get the price tag out, know that you are paying entirely too much for that kit. You could probably find a common version of the original release of the 2012 kits for, what they're trying to sell the new one for. So buyer beware on that. So going on to the rest of, your March kits, if you will, for the folks over at Round 2. There were 3 releases in the month of March. First up, you have the reissue of the 1960 Corvette. Now, if you're like, 60 Corvette, didn't they just do one of those? Yes, they did just release the MPC version of the 60 Corvette not too terribly long ago, but this is the AMT version of the 1960 Corvette. Keep in mind that, again, it has been quite a while since this kit was out last, and this is when AMT and MPC were 2 separate companies. So this is a different 1960 Corvette compared to the MPC one. This is a 2-in-1. It's a factory stock or street rod. The MPC one is like custom drag and factory stock. This has vinyl pad printed tires for stock and 2 what they're calling street rod pad printed tires for the rear wheels. So you get 6 tires with this. I don't believe anything has necessarily been done to this kit otherwise. New decal sheet using the 1970s street rods box art for it. But the last time the AMT 1960 Corvette was out was 2007. So that was last out right prior to Round 2 sort of coming into ownership, or at least leasing ship, if you will, of the tooling. Because remember, Round 2 leased the tooling from what was Tomei at that point for a little while before they actually bought out the whole company. Next up, you have a reissue of the 1950 Ford convertible. This kit takes its heritage all the way back to 1962 when this was tooled up, and it was last released in 2016 in a box art from the 1960s, I believe it was. This box art, the Street Rods box art, is from 1975. This kit has like 199 parts. It's basically one part short of 200. Hey, math, we're all good at that. It's custom. It's a show rod. It's factory stock convertible. It's a lot of parts. It's a lot of options. Several engines, several wheel sets. A very robust kit in the sense of being one of those customizing trophy series kits from the 1960s. If you can get past the fact that it's a trophy series kit from the 1960s, and keep in mind what that will mean to you in fit, finish, tooling quality, what the tooling quality looks like in terms of, whether or not there's a lot of flash or things like that, then, go into that with that forethought out there that, yeah, this is a really old model kit. It's not going to build up like a new one by any stretch of the imagination. As long as you're, okay with that, then buy it at will. And the last thing is a reissue of the 1980 boxing of the MPC Chevy 4x4 pickup truck known as the Sodbuster. So this kit has several retooled pieces to it. They've tooled up a new grille, they've tooled up a new tailgate, as well as new wheels, or excuse me, new tires, I should say. The wheels are the same. And so this backdates the kit to a 1980 Chevy pickup truck. This is going to be the first in several of these early 80s, mid 80s Chevy pickup trucks. They've, I believe, they're tooling up the single headlight grille, the grille with the turn signals in the grille rather than on the bumper. So there's going to be a couple of different options of this kit coming over the course of 2023, 2024. This is just the first one that we're going to see. New decal sheet. It's got the 1980s packaging, obviously. The decal sheets on this, the Ford and the Corvette, also are going to have gauge decals. That's been something that a lot of us have been pushing for sort of quietly behind the scenes for a while. Like, these expanded decal sheets are great and all that, but what about gauge decals? Like, gauge decals are a thing that everybody else does, and they were not doing for quite the long time. So they're doing that with these kits, and that's great to see because, I mean, dry brushing is what it is, but yeah, I'd rather just put the stupid decal in there and be done with it. That's my personal preference on that. Your mileage, of course, may vary with what you're, what you think about that. So over at Salvino's, there's going to be 3 released kits this month, and I say released in that sense because the 2023 Camaros are going to be making a big push again through the rest of spring. They've retooled the hood to reflect the 2023 changes, which is something that the first 2 2023 kits, the Kyle Larson and the Chase Elliott kits, did not have. They still had the old 2022 hoods. So it's going to have a new hood. They've fixed the roof rail, which if you've ever seen a Salvino's Camaro, you know that the roof rail on the driver's side stopped about, well, on the real car, about a foot short of where it should have been. It's about 1.5 inches, 2 inches on the kit itself. They fixed the roof rail, and then in addition to tooling that new hood up, you're going to get the dashboard and the electronics control box that was first seen in the 2023 Ryan Blaney Mustang. So with that retooled under the Camaros and the Camry coming out probably looking like more like May than April, all of the kits going forwards will have the dashboard, will have the electronics box, and will have at least their appropriate hoods. Arguing about whether or not the front end changes to the Camaro were enough to justify a new tooling insert for the front end. In reality, probably really isn't, because we're talking about thousandths of an inch in scale, so it'd be very, very hard to duplicate with tooling in a way that anyone would notice. Some sandpapering here and there, and you're pretty much going to get where you need to be. Anyway, this month in March, these kits are going to come out for sure. There may be some Camaros that leak out at the end of the month, depending on when they get up to running them, because they've been running into problems here and there with decals being late or boxes being late or licensing holdups, which is what the Toyotas are suffering from. And the Toyotas are licensed through Toyota. That's the sponsors. Monster apparently doesn't want to deal with anybody. Not like they won't do it, they just are too busy, they don't care. And then some of the other licensors are arguing about typeset and whether or not the colors are right on the box art and stuff like that. So it's very much a licensing thing at this point. Anyway, so you have the 2023 Penske cars, the other 2. You've had Ryan Blaney last month, so this month you're going to get the 2023 Austin Cindric car, which is again discount tire, looks very much like the last one. Little tweaks in here and there about the associate sponsorships, and then also the 2023 Joey Logano Pennzoil car. This one, a little bit of tweaks to, again, the layout of the car, the associate sponsorships, and things of that nature. You can argue about whether or not that's enough to justify you buying another one if you bought the 2022 Daytona 500 and championship cars, but again, 2023 liveries, so there's that. And then this month, sort of the kit of the month, if you will, for the club, and this will come out a little bit later in March for retail sales, and probably just for the crappy picture, but it is what it is, the 77 Dodge Charger from Richard Petty Motorsports, Richard Petty's car. This is going to have the Vermilion on the decal sheet, and it's spaced out. So you have like a front fender piece, a door piece, and then a rear quarter piece, and then the flyover, the flying buttress part that goes over the roof is a separate piece. All of these decals are done by Cartograph now, so the Vermilion is very flexible, very nice. If you bought some of those older Vermilion decals that they made for some of the older petty kits, like 3-4 years ago, they were pretty awful to work with. These, again, printed by Cartograph, so they're primo decals, regardless of what you think of the company. It's the Salvinos JR itself. The decals are made by Cartograph. They're really nice. Yeah, so if you want to play with that, you can. The way the Vermilion's laid out, it's hard to see in that picture, but there's a blue pinstripe that goes around the Vermilion. That's a slightly darker shade of blue than the petty blue. It's the only year that blue decal blue outline existed on the old Charger bodies. It's on the Vermilion, and then it's also on the decal sheet as a separate outline. So if you wanted to paint the Vermilion and not use the decals, the pinstriping is still there for you as well. So that's a different option for you, depending on how you want to go about painting that. And that covers the domestic side of things. So over in Japan, we have one kit from Aoshima that's significantly different or new, and that is the reissue of the Velside Mazda FD3S RX-7, last seen in 2012, so 10 years since the last reissue of it. This is being added to the two model car line for the first time. Yeah, I mean, it's been around since I think 2002, so this is not a new kit by any stretch of imagination. There's no new parts or anything in it. You've seen a Velside Combat RX-7, same part contents as before. It's just bringing it back to the market again for the first time in a decade. So if you were interested in this particular car, it will be widely available again for you. And then we have the Fujimi kits. They're bringing back a couple of Nissan race cars. First up, you have a old school first gen KPG C10 Skyline GTR. This is part of a series of kits that Fujimi did. I think the last time these were out were in the early 2000s, and they're known as the Rubber Soul series. They were a bunch of these first-gen GTR race cars. This particular car, I believe, is a tribute car. The only time I can find the 17 being run on these cars was a 72 Fuji Grand Prix race, back when the Grand Prix in Japan were touring car races before they became F1 races. After the fuel crisis in '73, the Grand Prix in Japan became an actual Grand Prix for real. There were F1 races in Japan prior to that, but the Grand Prix terminology was also used in touring car races. Anyway, this appears to be a modern adaptation of the car. It's got the 17 logo on it. It's sort of got the old Takahashi colors, but he didn't actually run this car. The last time they did this kit, the box art had some different lettering on the front spoiler that was a picture of a real car, as opposed to this, which appears to be a picture of a real car. There's been a little bit of photoshopping done to it to take those details off there. Those decals weren't in the original release of this kit either. I think they're Bridgestone logos, which is a licensing issue. But this time they're just gone altogether. And like I said, this one I think again is a tribute car. It's a modern version. I'm not even sure this is really a GTR. This might be a combination of parts that were done in order to sort of make a tribute car. It does not include that side mirror that is like a carbon fiber modern side mirror. That is not in the kit, but otherwise, it is what it is in that sense. And then a reissue of a kit, again, that hasn't been seen in about 15 years, is a reissue of the Prince Skyline. Yes, before Skylines were Nissans, they were Princes before Prince and Nissan merged. This represents the second place finishing car in the GT2 series, a class in the 1964 Japanese Grand Prix. Again, Grand Prix touring car. This kit pretty much builds exactly this car. I don't think there's any... The only thing about this kit that doesn't come with... that won't match the picture on the box is the license plate. They didn't, for whatever reason, make that front license plate, but all the rest of the decals are there. The kit... I have a couple of these in streetcar format because they did make a streetcar version of this, and they're really nice kits. They were made in the mid-2000s, so they're modern in the sense that it's not like a it's curbside, but it's not a motorized chassis. It's not a real crappy interior. Interior builds a platform style interior, and yeah, it's a pretty decent kit all in all, considering what it is. Actually, that early GTR, the one we just looked at, same thing. It's got a simplified chassis, not motorized, but it built a platform interior. It's got a newer body. It's probably the second best of the first gen GTRs, with Tamiya's kit still being the best and Aoshima's motorized junk being the worst. So, if you're interested in that Rubber Soul one, again, that's not a bad kit either. It's not Tamiya great, but it's certainly better than the alternatives that Aoshima produces. And then we have several kits out of Hasegawa. These are all going to be reissues, so we're going to plow through these relatively quickly. First up, you have the Honda Civic Fairyo VTI Blue. This is a reissue of a kit. The Fairyo has been reissued in the past. There is a specifically molded in metallic blue version, and that is what this is. Molded in metallic blue. Just bringing it back around in that boxing. That boxing hadn't been seen in about 15 years, so yeah, it is what it is. The Faryos have been reissued more recently than that in the 20-teens, but yeah, okay, sorry, metallic blue. And then next up, you have a Mitsubishi Lancer Evo 3 in the 1995 Rally of Thailand winning livery. So this is a Kimi Mäkinen car, or Tommy Mäkinen, excuse me. And Kimi Mäkinen on the brain because Kimi, was it Räikkönen? I'm mispronouncing the last name, I'm going to try. Is going to be racing in NASCAR again this year on a road course. Anyway, Tommy Mäkinen raced this car. I'm trying to remember. There's a way this words out that he won the Rally of Thailand in the Asia Pacific Rally Championship, but it's 7th place in the World Rally Championship. Like, this was staged, not staged twice, but it was scored twice. It was scored as a WRC event and an APRC event, and he won the APRC car class of it. So yeah, this is molded in white, and they give you sort of the side stripes and things like that, but you have to paint the whole yellow white two-tone on your own. None of the yellows on the decal sheet whatsoever. And then you have a reissue of their Volkswagen Beetle Type 1, this being the 1963 Nippon Grand Prix, which is the year before that Prince Skyline we just looked at. This is the first Japanese Grand Prix, and this car, in its class, won. And they include decals to the first place car, the second place car, and the third place car, because that's right, the entire podium wore Volkswagen Beetles, being driven by Japanese drivers. The literature on the kit says that the kit does not match the real car exactly. I'm assuming that's some wheels, maybe bumpers, maybe there's modifications done to the car in the sense of a race that were not in this. I don't believe there's a roll cage in this necessarily, but I don't know that there would have been a roll cage in the car in 1963 either. It's not exactly, these Beetles aren't exactly the fastest thing in the world. I'm not sure you could necessarily roll one over unless you really tried. But yeah, that's a thing. And you notice there's a license plate on there, and there's just duct tape over the headlights because these were driven to the track and then driven home afterwards. And then you have a reissue of their newer tool AE92 Corolla Levin. This is in the 1991 JTTC Team Tom's livery. First time that this livery has been out, but this AE92 kit's, I think, 7 or 8 releases into this series at this point. It's great because now we're gone to, from the winning teams that have won Class 3 things to the other teams that ran these cars, and I love that for, the collector in me who really would like to be able to build all the cars from a single season of JTC. It's near to impossible because somebody would always run some weird thing like a Prelude or the Isuzu Geminis or things like that. But I'm okay with having every single Corolla that ran 1991 or whatever. So it looks gray in these pictures, but the side stripes were silver, so it's a red and silver scheme. Basic livery, but it's still a pretty nice looking car. And again, is what it is in that sense. They have a reissue of their Subaru 360 Deluxe. This is Subaru's answer to the Volkswagen Beetle back in the day. This is going to have a roof carrier added to it, and the roof carrier, which we'll show you in a second, is made entirely out of PE. So yeah, that's a thing. The kit itself going to be the regular 360, and there won't be anything different about that. And then here's a picture of that roof carrier in PE. I'm not sure if maybe the roof bars themselves, the part that attaches to the car, are plastic, because That's a lot of bending to make it get a three-dimensional shape out of PE. Because obviously, looking at the rest of it, the side rails, the bottom rails, those are all one-dimensional and flat. Those roof rails appear to be three-dimensional, which means you're going to be bending those in like three different directions to make a box rail out of it, or those are plastic. I'm not sure. I've never seen this version of it. I think they've done this roof rail thing in the past. If not on this, on other cars, but yeah, it's coming out in this one. And then the last thing on this video is a reshoot of their Sauber Mercedes C9 kit as the 1989 test car. So a vague, not liveried car. Their C9 is like all of their other 90s Group C cars, and so it's the curbside, very basic, about 60 parts, no real detail, brakes without any calipers, that whole thing. So just know what you're getting into with that, and yeah. That, guys, wraps up March of 2023. So now you know what you're going to spend your money on this month, and we'll see you guys on the other side.